Now, Sports Talk with Broads. Here's Hunter Brody.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome on in to Sports Talk with Broads. I want to apologize for how delayed this episode is. Unfortunately, real life happens, and I just want to give an update on what's going on. After Game 1, I explained that my puppy got attacked by a Rottweiler and had to go through surgeries and things of that nature. Well, we woke up and had some problems with some swelling and had to rush her back to the place that she went to, and now they're trying to figure out with some testing what's going on. So the reason why I was not able to post-game show Game 5 the way that I normally do is because real life happens, and I had to take care of that, and right now we're kind of waiting to get back information, and that's where we're at. So the moment I got back to my house, which is right now, I turned on the computer, I fired everything up, and I said it's time to express my feelings on what happened in that Sixers game, which it sucked. I mean, let's be realistic. It was definitely horrible. It was painful. And the Sixers showed no heart, none at all. In a possible closeout game on your home floor after winning the first 3 games, that's what you give us? That's the energy that you go out there with? It's pretty disappointing, and I'm very furious with a lot of people. Joel Embiid's defense was an issue, and I get it. His thumb is going to cause him pain, and it's going to be a lot to deal with. But you're out there, and I can't witness such a putrid level of defense. You got to find a way to maximize what you could bring to the table, even with that flaw. And if this is what it is, oh damn, the Sixers are in some big time trouble. There's no doubt about it. James Harden was absolutely atrocious. 11 field goals. In what universe is James Harden taking 11 field goals? And I thought that there were plenty of opportunities where he actually drove the lane and he got into a spot where maybe I could see him taking a floater or just kissing it off the glass, and instead he's kicking it out sort of like at times when we used to see Ben Simmons do it. Is that a hamstring issue? Is it a lack of confidence issue? Is it a combination of both? I don't know, but if James Harden is going to give you 11 field goals when Joel Embiid is playing with one hand, well, then this team is going to be a disaster. It's not rocket science here. When we talked about Game 1, Maxey exploded. James Harden was facilitating greatly. Embiid did what he needed to do when Toronto threw certain looks his way. He was finding ways to get other teammates going, in the game, and that was a tremendous style for those outings. My point is, when they were winning games, look at how everyone played. When they stink, all of them, Maxey seems to be getting exposed a bit. He's 21. I'm not putting the world on his shoulders, but I think over time, over this series, Nick Nurse has figured out a way to kind of limit his explosiveness. And you're seeing the repercussions of that, which is someone that you can't rely on as much as we would need to. And I hate to say this from a Fred VanVleet perspective, but I'll tell you what, him not playing benefited them. It's kind of a weird game, isn't it? When Fred VanVleet is out there, who is a good scorer, a good player, a really solid structure around your squad, the Raptors definitely look to have better matchups with him off the floor when it comes to mismatches and attacking. It's just kind of interesting how that goes, considering he's one of their top players. But you could see a totally different Raptor squad and a totally different angle of playing the Sixers when that is the case. And I'm fascinated how the Fred VanVleet storyline is going to play out for the next do I say next couple of games? Oh, that's so painful. I've been pretty vocal. Sixers are going to clear this thing and win this thing in 5 games. And they didn't, and I'm extremely pissed off about it. But I do want to throw this out there as well. When the Raptors were down 3-0, what was everybody saying? They're dead in the water. There's no way in hell they're going to win. No one's ever come back down 3-0 before. In what universe are they going to win this series, right? And now the table has flipped completely, and there's so much pressure on the Sixers to win an away game in Toronto in a very hostile environment. Everyone on the Sixers side seems to be clinching a bit because they're upset and nervous about what's going to happen on Thursday night, which, by the way, ruined my NFL draft experience, now you got a Sixers game going the same exact day Howie Roseman's going to be making some moves and trying to get creative and fancy, even though that's probably going to be annoying too, and we're going to be blown away with whatever the hell they elect to do, because let's be realistic, the draft is not their strong suit. But I digress, as we're going to have two very emotional things going on at once. See how quickly things changed? It can revert the other way just as quickly, too. That's all I'm saying. And that's why even before the series began, there's so much being talked about game by game where I think everything gets exaggerated. Now, after 3 games, I definitely exaggerated to the point where I said the Sixers are a lock, and now here we are questioning if that's the case or not. But you're seeing 2 different styles of the team play, and it seems like they don't know how to close out. And that is a Joel Embiid, James Harden, Tyrese Maxey, and Doc Rivers problem. It's so wild to think about the Doc Rivers experience. Here's a coach that can consistently get you 3-1 series leads. He can get you up 3-2 in a series. And from a plain surface level, if I told you your coach will get you up 3-2, he'll get you in an atmosphere where you win the first 3 games of a series. You won't take that every single day of the week, but it's obvious that whenever it's go mode and it's time to snap the neck of your opponent, they just lose that will. That goes on the coach when it's such a big sample size of Doc, but I'm also really disgusted in the players because it's not Doc's job to have someone who's paid $30-40 million a year. These athletes should know you're on your home floor. The fans, I feel so bad for the fans that spent their hard-earned money to go to that game thinking it was going to be finished, because even though they booed respectfully and rightfully at halftime because you're seeing a 10-point lead, a 13-point lead, the Raptors just consistently scoring points in the paint. Look, the second quarter was atrocious. They couldn't score at all. I mean, I'm watching 8-minute spans of nothing. I'm watching 5-minute spans. I mean, there was like maybe 3 total minutes of that second frame where it looked better than the rest. But what am I talking about? 3 minutes of 12? A 12-minute quarter? There's 3 minutes that wasn't as much of a disaster as the other 9? It was terrible. It was awful. And when you look at their defense, too, look, they're not a team that's built off of defense. They're a team that when their offensive efficiency is rolling as best as it possibly can, that's why they're as talented as they are. That's the most difficult point when you're a defending team, is that Sixers offense. When it's clicking in the half court, it's beautiful. When they're finding good looks and knocking them down, it's awesome. But that wasn't the case here. You weren't really finding great looks. Realistically, your offense felt like it was either James Harden giving up on a play and kicking it out like Ben Simmons would at times, or Danny Green ripping a lot of threes. And I'm not mad at Danny because there was somewhat desperation. And sure, some of them were open towards the end, but he made 4 threes. He took a lot. Don't get me wrong. I'm not blaming Danny for that, though. That's the substance as a whole as an offense. But I'll tell you what, the difference between what I saw in the first 3 games and what I'm seeing now is your stars were playing significantly better. And that doesn't downplay what the Raptors do, because the Raptors are an athletic team. They muck it up a bit. They grind it up. They make you uncomfortable. They work hard. But you look at that points in the paint, they had an operation there of, targeting, it seems, what was a piss-poor defensive Joel Embiid and keep taking it to the rack. And if you're going to play scared with the thumb, and I'm not telling you that he is superhuman. No, I mean, he has a thumb problem, and that's going to cause you some pain. But you're going to have to do something different, because the effort that we got out of Embiid when it comes to overall dominance, we need another step, and we need a big-time step from James Harden. Now, I don't know what you're going to get out of Max. He seems like now that he's been playing in this series, the toughness, the physicality, the size, the length, there's not as much to take advantage of. Nick Nurse somewhat kind of limited that to the best of his ability, and it seems like Maxey's kind of overwhelmed at the moment, which makes a lot of sense considering the kid is 21 years old, but that's the difference in what we saw in the first 3 games and where we're at now. Here's what I won't fall into. The trap of, well, really, bros, it's one shot away from being 3-2. The other way, if overtime doesn't happen, yeah, but now you're diminishing what superstar talent does, right? I mean, do we ever watch Kobe Bryant highlights and go, well, that series could have been 2-1 the other way, but it went 2-1 Lakers because of Kobe. And we're going to just say, well, Kobe took the shot, but it was that close to going the other way. No, when you play in playoff series, the difference in winning or losing a game comes down to your superstar delivering a big shot or not. So I'm not going to claim that, whoa, I'm going to downplay how awesome Joel Embiid's shot was because now it's 3-2 and it's closer. Absolutely not. When you get to the second round, the third round in the Eastern Conference Finals, when you get to the nitty-gritty of a deep series of two really strong opponents and two really strong teams, that's what it comes down to at time. An overtime shot. Did you step up and put your balls on the table or not? So I'm not going to pretend like I'm supposed to now ridicule that and make it seem like that's not impressive. It's impressive. When a star makes a big shot with 0.2 seconds left on the clock to steal a game on the road, those are the little details, and it's not little, they're big details, but those are important shots. Extremely valuable games and closeout moments. That's the difference in being a star or not. So I'm sorry. I don't look at it that way because now you're diminishing what a star did. And that's what the name of the NBA playoffs are all about. It's the name of the game. Is big-time moments, big-time shots, big-time players. And that's the difference in series all the time in the postseason. Now, we have a $5 donation coming in from Radiation. Do you think that there is something to James not trying at all to get his preferred coach? No. I think that's absolutely reaching. I saw that someone on the national media, whatever it was, First Take, I don't know if it was the Kendrick Perkins of the world. It was one of those guys said something about trying to get D'Antoni here and all that. Absolutely not. James Harden is a shell of himself right now. And, I mean, he's not the 30, he's still not trash. Like, he's not an absolute trash player, but we hold him to such a high standard considering how he would average 30 plus for multiple years in a row and will you to victory and dominate. He's not that anymore. I don't need him to be that through 7-game series, but when nights like game 5 happen, I need it once in a while. I'm not demanding every night. That would be foolish. He's not that player, but can we get it once in a while? Can we get it once in a blue moon? Can we get it a little bit more than we are now? It's like his IQ. We always stress the IQ. The IQ of the game is absolutely there from a facilitating standpoint. But where we're lacking and where we're missing here is how can my game now scoring-wise change based off of where I'm at in my career? So he changed the way that he runs the offense, which is extremely important, and I think has gone a long way with how this team is ran. And when the team, like I talked about, their offensive efficiency when clicking is a scary weapon. And other teams fear that when it gets stagnant and gets slow and when the ball is moving around, but then he's afraid to shoot it and puts the ball on the floor and then drains the shot clock because he's dribbling in between his legs and then he takes a step back and he misses. I mean, he's shooting like 38% from the field this series when we're talking about 2-pointers. I mean, it's bad. It's bad. So he's changed his style offensively from a passing level, but not so much from okay, how can I still be better at scoring? He can't break some of these defenders down. And look, they had a whole week off before they went into that first game against Toronto at the Wells Fargo Center. They said they went through a mini training camp. So maybe that training camp was a little bit tough on him and his body, because I'm thinking, is it possible that week off gave him that burst, gave him that adrenaline rush to start the playoff series, but then now that he's playing so much, it's starting to linger and starting to catch up to him. But they told us that they were going through a mini camp. So if they're going through a mini camp, it's not like he's sitting home resting his legs doing absolutely nothing where he's coming back with a little bit of surge. That's not the case if you're working as hard as they were making it seem that they were working before they went to the first game, right? Because they had those 7 and 8 matchups, their 9 and 10 matchups, whatever it was for the play-in tournament. So I don't know if I can necessarily buy that. I do, though, need a sip of this coffee. That I desperately need. You want to talk about the bench? because the bench stunk. Matisse Thybulle, you selfish individual. He basically just eliminated his entire self from this series. And trust me, you're going to win or lose because Embiid, Harden, and Maxey play well or they don't play well. But you're going to need 10 minutes, 14 minutes, 15 minutes of someone to eat off the bench. And Matisse Thybulle, sorry, guys, I'm not there for you. You're not important to me. I'm so invested in getting one shot, not getting the second shot. I'm not going to get vaccinated because I don't care enough about you. I don't care enough about my profession, and it shows because he sucked. He airballed shots left and right, airballed a layup, that turnover in the corner, that lazy pass back to Maxey, which got stolen over by the sideline because his inability to play offense, because he wasn't even willing to get better in that department in his career after a few seasons of playing in the NBA. Like, that is an issue to me. And I know that falls on the list because there's plenty of other top-tier targets on this roster right now, which is your superstar players. But I'll tell you what. I mean, he literally just said, don't worry about it, guys. You don't need me. I'm not there for you. I don't care enough about you. That was his message, and it showed up big time. And he's hamstringing his career. Does that even make sense? He's hamstringing his career? I don't think that's the word I'm looking for. But he's clearly hurting his career significantly based off of this stance he's taking. Oh, Broads, I respect his stance. Well, then you're a dope. I mean, that's what it is to me. Because he is unwilling to commit to this franchise and to this group of guys in the locker room, and it doesn't matter enough to him. Okay, fine. But look what you did. You're hurting everyone around you. It's crazy. What else stunk? Everybody else. The bench stunk. Niang has a tough matchup. Whew. Sometimes I feel sorry for Niang. He had some big moments for this team throughout the regular season. He's made some big shots. But you talk about the athleticism of the Raptors. This guy's moving in quicksand out there. Crazy. All right, we will go to the phones. I want to hear from you. 856-442-9805. And by the way, there was that one stretch where we can debate Doc Rivers. Is it Doc's fault? Is it other people's fault? I'm leaning players over Doc. Now, Doc's track record is too big for me to ignore, and I'll always go back to what I heard Paul George and Kawhi Leonard say after that Clipper series, where after they were up 3-1, it was just roll the ball out. Don't worry about it. You'll be okay. Just play the game. You won 3 games playing this way anyway, so you'll be all right. And if that's the message, I don't think that that's necessarily fair here, Doc, because they have clearly shifted momentum, and you got to do something back after you got clipped in the jaw pretty heavily by the Raptors and Nick Nurse. Give them credit for their toughness and their work ethic, but come on, Doc, you cannot sell the same message. At the same time, these players should know better. Doc Rivers should not have to warn Tobias, James Harden, Maxey, Embiid how big of a moment this is. That's part of the reason why you get paid $30 million a year to play the damn sport of basketball. Everyone and their mother knew. Did you know, listening, how big of a game this was? Or did Doc Rivers have to tell you, the listener? I'm speaking to you right now listening. Did anyone need to tell you how big it is? Or don't you just know how big it is? So I know that sounds a little bit like I'm taking both sides. My point is, my number one emphasis is not Doc. Doc is on the list. He's on the list. But Harden, Embiid, those are the bigger issues. I did not like, though, the lineup of Maxey, Tobias, Thybulle, Niang, and Reed. That went exactly the way that we anticipated it would. All right, we will start things off with Sean. What's up, Sean?
What's going on, Hunter? How you doing?
It's been a crazy day, my friend, a crazy day. We got the puppy back home, though, now. We're waiting for some more results from everything that happened, but I'll tell you what, it has been a crazy 48 hours.
I bet. Well, I'm glad the puppy is home.
Yes.
I'm glad it survived.
Thank you.
Let me start by publicly saying I was wrong. I mean, I called your show the other day, and I said the Sixers not only would win last night, but win going away. And so I got to eat it too. And I should have taken into account the Doc Rivers factor before I made that prediction, because Doc is a magician. He can make 3-0 series leads disappear in the span of a few minutes. I mean, I blame everybody too, but to me, this series comes down to the superiority of Nick Nurse as a coach. He's playing chess. Rivers is playing checkers. I mean, to use a hockey analogy, the Raptors did a New Jersey Devils-style neutral zone trap on them defensively last night, and the Sixers had no answers. I mean, they were totally engulfed in seaweed, it seemed, breaking down on the offensive and the defensive end of the floor. Guys shaking their head, hey, I thought you were picking that guy up. I thought he was your man. You know, and I don't understand offensively their concept, Hunter. I mean, I don't follow the NBA as closely today as I did when I was younger, but I was in a stream last night and they kept saying it over and over. It's ISO ball. It's like one guy has the basketball and 4 guys stand there like statues. How is that going to work in postseason play?
Yeah, and I appreciate it, Sean. I think that is definitely an issue at times where it gets too stagnant. You watch other offenses, the ball's moving, guys are cutting, guys are actively kind of, moving around the perimeter. You're seeing screens getting set and things are going down for sure. At the same time, there are moments where it's fine to play isolation and give the ball to your best player and say, let's go get me a damn shot and go get me a bucket. So there's times where I think that there's validity to it, and then there's times where it is a problem. You're absolutely dead on, though, with the whole, hey, I thought that was your guy, or everyone's looking around. And how many times after a bucket was scored, one guy goes to the baseline to inbound it, but the ball's still bouncing around and everyone's looking at who's going to get it, right? Like, there was no sense of urgency in even those areas of the game. So when you're talking about getting the ball to a guy who's going to inbound and getting the ball back onto the floor and moving up the court, it looked like everyone was standing around just waiting for others to do something. And that was somewhat of a description of what we saw even when you were trying to run things offensively. Guys standing around, waiting to see if anything was going to occur. Once again, you look at Tobias Harris, and at times you go, all right, Toby. Okay, Toby. Like, that's what we're going for here. Toby and Danny Green making some threes. And I hate to break it to you, you're not going to win many games when that's how you're going to run your squad, and that's what's holding you in. You maybe be able to get away with them holding you in it for a little bit, but then eventually Harden has to go off. Eventually, Joel Embiid needs to take over. Those defensive attempts on some of those possessions by Joel in the third was bad. You heard him talking, too, going back to James Harden and his lack of shooting. You heard him speak to the media about how that's on Doc to figure this whole thing out. I don't like that answer. I don't like that answer that Joel Embiid, even though he's not really wrong, he's saying, but I think that was a very emotional snap. I thought there was and Joel keeps it 100. So if I'm going to be fair, it's not like this is the only time Joel Embiid has been vocal and just giving you honesty. Joel Embiid is an honest man who just stands there in the microphone and tells you how it is. So this isn't out of character by any means, but knowing the situation, I talked big time about Nick Nurse when he was complaining and he was ripping apart the referees. When you do that, it tells me something about where you are in that moment. It tells me something about where you feel internally, right? When I'm hearing Joel Embiid say, I don't know, tell Doc that's on Doc, that's on the coach to figure out how to get him to be more aggressive. Harden has to be Harden. That almost tells me deep down internally, not that he's wrong, because we're all feeling the same exact way, but I'm not Joel Embiid. And, now this is telling the Raptors something, but if I'm the Raptors, I smell blood. I smell blood with that statement. I could be reading too much into it, because if Joel Embiid goes out there and balls, even with the thumb injury, gives you 33, gives you 14 boards, and the Sixers play well on the road in Game 6 and win, then it doesn't matter at all. And I'm not ruling that out. Because just like a lot of us, we ruled out the Raptors doing what the Raptors did in Game 5. And there they went. Now, I'm not going to diminish the Raptors, but I thought a lot of what I saw in Game 5 was more me upset with what the Sixers did. I'll give the Raptors credit because they did play a damn hard basketball game. They got into the paint, and you look at the paint disparity in scoring, and it makes my eyeballs pop out of my damn head. At the same time, though, lackadaisical the Sixers did. They just weren't focused. They weren't prepared from tip-off. It's like they rolled the ball out there and thought they were just going to win because they were at home. That doesn't mean the Raptors don't deserve credit, because they do. And one thing that Sean brought up, too, in the first call was Nick Nurse coaching circles around Doc. Sometimes it's just handed to you on a silver platter. But Fred VanVleet not being in there was massive. It was an upgrade. It's wild how this sport works. And would that have happened if he wasn't hurt? Absolutely not. But also, a good coach, when handed a situation, either makes or breaks it by going with a different alternative. And you look at what they got out of Precious. You look at what they got out of their bench just in general and their unit compared to what the Sixers got. It was night and day. And the Sixers don't have any of these guys. We've touched on this in the past throughout the regular season. One of my biggest problems with Doc is he seems to put people away and just not give them life and not give them time of the day at all. Where these bench players that come out of nowhere and they become something and they have a role, you have to teach them to be that specific role. It's just not out of anywhere. Maxey is the outlier. He's not really the rule. He's the exception to the rule. Paul Reed, Isaiah Joe, I'm not telling you they're world beaters by any means, but over a year or two of working with these guys, that's the difference in finding someone who can give you 12 minutes off the bench. You don't just snap your fingers and there they go when you look at Milwaukee, when you look at Toronto, when you look at some of these guys that they rely on off the bench, they don't just pop out of nowhere. We get it. We're nervous about Paul Reed in the postseason. But over a year or two, molding them into that role is something that Doc Rivers doesn't do because he's always about the veteran. And I'm not anti-veteran in big moments. I'm not. Not from the theory of it. For the theory of it, I think that it's fine to believe that. I want someone who's been around the block more so than I do someone who's really fresh and raw. With that said, you kind of have to form this thing so you can have reliable guys for a 10-minute span that won't be too overmatched, too overpowered. Just doesn't have that. It's a longer issue than just right now in the postseason. This is a 2-year window of things when it comes to, these lower-end bench guys that I'm speaking about. Not that that's the difference in winning or losing a championship. And by the way, before we go to Amadeo, who's been waiting patiently on the phones, thank you, Amadeo, for that. I will say that for anyone saying, see, the Sixers are frauds, the Sixers could never. I never thought the Sixers were an NBA championship team. All right? The Sixers can never win a championship. Look how they're folding. They've been stuck in the second round for years. All right? What did I say all year long? You look at Milwaukee, you look at Boston, and Boston looks scary now, by the way, and they didn't early on in the season. Talk about a big turnaround. There were discussions about trading Jaylen Brown because he doesn't work with Tatum. They've really grinded through, and they look like a damn good athletic defensive team with a lot of pop right now. Fun to watch from a basketball fan perspective, but damn, do I hate the Celtics. You look at all these teams. I said they're all in the same mix. They're just all in that same grouping. Someone's going to come out on top and get hot and be the right squad. Right now, it looks like the Boston Celtics. But, to tell me, bros, they're not a championship caliber team. I never claimed that they're an automatic. I mean, when they first got James Harden, was I riding the high? Absolutely. Once we saw them play and we learned a little bit more about their whole entire brand and everything about them, it's not breaking news to tell me that they don't have everything to go win a title. That's not breaking news to me. What I needed to see this year was getting out of the second round. That was the goal this year for me to label it a positive. They haven't been to the third round in 20 years. Right now, they're in a tough battle. And they better figure it the hell out, or this is going to be a devastating time in Philadelphia. Let's go to Amadeo. What's up, Amadeo?
And even going back to when you were talking about, even giving the Raptors credit and all that, it's like, even when you were saying, the Sixers just play that bad, it's just that when I look at the Raptors stats, they shot 27% or something like that from beyond the arc. I guess that doesn't matter at that point when you're just easily getting points in the paint. They were shooting 50+% from the field, and just everything inside under the rim just looked way too easy. Achua just making Joel Embiid's life a living hell for some reason. I don't know why that was a reason whatsoever.
Well, it's probably the thumb, to be honest. It's like, hey, let's see what that thumb is like. Let's attack Joel. And you could tell there were times previously in Joel Embiid's tenure before the thumb injury where maybe he would go up and challenge certain shots and maybe he would play it differently. But right now, it almost seemed as if they said, all right, Joel, let's see how good that thumb is.
Yeah, even like looking at last night's game as well, it's just like there were a lot of moments throughout where it just looked like Joel Embiid was doing like what he like used to do, like even seasons ago, just parking himself like beyond the 3-point line and not trying to attack, go into the paint. And it's just like it just felt like that was everyone during this game. They just couldn't penetrate. James Harden can't do it. Tyrese Maxey couldn't do it. And it kind of felt like, yeah, since Danny Green was hitting those shots, it kind of felt like they were force-feeding it to them. Like, here, Danny, you're open. Take the shot. You've been hitting them. Take the shot. Take the shot. And, of course, when you're giving Danny Green so many chances, he's not going to hit all of them. It's just not.
I agree completely with you. And you go back to Joel Embiid on the offensive side. When Joel's hurt, it changes his entire game. And we were wondering, and I needed Game 5 to know, was Game 4 just a bad game for Joel, even though the thumb injury was going to play a role? My question was, let's say he had no thumb injury and he just happened to have a poor performance. Is Game 5 a good one? So let's say Game 4 was bad with the thumb injury. Was that just a bad game and he can have a good game with the thumb injury as well? Well, when he's that hurt and you saw some sloppy turnovers early, not really being able to manage the ball properly. I'm not making excuses and saying we're losing because of a thumb injury. That's not what I'm saying at all. But when we study Joel Embiid and look at only 20 points and we look at the points in the paint and we look at how at times, especially that third quarter, it was abysmal on the defensive side. We're looking at a man who needs surgery on his thumb and is having problems playing with it.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought with the thumb injury, it was more going to be affected on like his handling of the ball and maybe more of the turnover wise, just because he probably wouldn't be able to pass the ball as efficiently. I didn't think it was going to affect his shot because you thought in Game 3 when he got that thumb injury, he makes that game-winning shot. It's like, okay, maybe his shot's not going to be affected that much, but it seems like right now he's more worried about the thumb injury. That's probably affecting his confidence on the offensive side, even getting into the paint and just trying to be that dominant force that he could always be.
Yeah, you're right, Amadeo. Good call. I guess the optimistic view would be, okay, now he's played with it for a couple games. Is there a learning curve? What I can and can't do? What isn't working and what needs to change? He needs way more than 20. Like, it's unfortunate that we're in this position, but Joel's got to carry this team. You brought in James Harden to step up for when Joel did have some off nights because it's called being a human being, and that's inevitable. Pascal Siakam had some horrible games. Now he's turning it around. It's just being a human. That doesn't mean Joel Embiid stinks and he's bad and this and that. Every good player has some bad games. We brought in James Harden thinking that whenever Joel did play poorly, you'd have that secondary layer that can help out. Turns out that's not the case when it comes to scoring. So now it's all back on Joel. All the pressure that we thought would be off of him is just applied right back to him. And that's why teams now have 2 guys and 3 guys. And that's just the nature of the beast in today's era of basketball. And Joel, it's like, you had that big-time, huge shot in Game 3. It's all for nothing if they end up losing this series and going through such a historic loss that we've never seen. I see the reaction of, we're done, it's over, we're cooked, we're fried. I'm not there yet. I'm not feeling great. I'd be a liar to say I'm out here waving pom-poms and I'm jumping up for joy. No, I would never envision that we're going back to Toronto for Game 6. What I'm going to say is, think about the feeling of where Toronto was down 3-0. Wow, they turned it around big time. And did you see how pathetic and disgusting they played in those first 2 games? And now they're playing a totally different game. Well, look how bad the Sixers have played over the last couple of games. Look how great they played in the first couple of games where they blew out the Raptors with ease. You know, which team are you going to get? If you get a Sixers team that played on the first 2 nights, well, then you're going to see this thing closed out in 6. Or if it happens to be in Game 7 after a loss in Toronto, which would kill me emotionally to have to go through that and sit through that pain and that angst and that anxiety. But it's like, what team do we get? And a lot of these problems stem from just the Sixers shooting the Sixers in the foot too. I would feel different if it's, whoa, I'm overwhelmed by everything the Raptors have. There are some things that the Raptors are doing that's making the Sixers feel uncomfortable, but it shouldn't ever be to the point where they lose 4 straight games because of it, and it's that challenging. No, there might be hurdles, to get over and to leap over, but it's not to the point where it's so overpowering and it's such a hard ask that you lose 4 straight games after being up 3-0 and losing games at home to drop a series in game 5 and 7 in a hypothetical. The Raptors don't have that much. We have $5 donation coming in from JM. This is all LeBron's master plan at work. Glenn is selling on... I'm done with that. I appreciate the $5, but I don't... What are we doing here? Conspiracy theories of LeBron wanting Doc Rivers? I mean, what are we doing? No, I don't think Doc Rivers is going to try and lose another series lead and have this on his legacy because of wanting to go play with a Lakers team that's going to be losing LeBron in the future, that's tied to Russell Westbrook, that's an embarrassment and one of the worst organizations right now and very underwhelmed. I don't think that that's the case. So I appreciate the $5, but I'm going to try and keep things more in the reasonable respect. Now, I'm seeing some chats going on here in the live chat about how bad Sixers fans are because they booed the team down at half. No, that's a fine thing to do. It's holding them accountable. The next comment says Mayweather fans, fans that only care when things are going well. Fairweather fans, right? Is that what I'm looking for? I'm thinking of Floyd Mayweather. Fair weather fans? Why does that sound? Why does that sound wrong? You know when you see a word or hear a word and you go, that's not right. Okay, fair weather. Okay, I'm right on that. Had to Google to make sure. Just sounded wrong. What? You're saying Philadelphia sports fans only care about their teams when they're good and they're fake bandwagon fans? Oh, well, okay. Oh, well, okay. Only one of the, top 5 biggest markets in the entire country for sports? Please. You think of Boston, you think of L.A., you got New York, you got Philadelphia. I mean, that's one of the most embarrassing takes I've ever heard. It's called holding accountable. What am I supposed to say? Good job, guys! Congratulations on being down 10 and a half! Yeah, down 15 in Game 5! We're here for you! Woohoo! No! Boo! Wake the fuck up! That's what you're supposed to do. And when it came down to it, they tried everything in their power to will them to victory when they creeped it to 8-9 points. You thought maybe there was a shot Maxey going into the fourth quarter. Okay, a little floater. All right, here we are. And the fans gave them everything. It's on the players then. We just react to what the players do. When they suck, we're just letting you know, you suck. There's nothing wrong with that. The reason why we're doing that is because we care so much. The fair-weather fans would accept trash. We don't accept trash. We accept good play, reasonable effort, and we admire that. When you don't show up for Game 5 in a closeout situation, and now you're going back to Toronto, to let them know that what you're doing is not acceptable is a fan base that cares a lot. Let's go back to the phones. Hello, good evening. You're on Broads Media.
Hey, Broads. Really hard to try to stay positive at the last couple of games from the Sixers.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong at all. What was your takeaway after what you saw last night?
I really want to harp on the first call. I couldn't agree more about it's just the offensive. You know, the first couple of games, there's a lot of ball movement. Maxey's able to penetrate. And then, now we have the statue offense going of, why are we not doing that high pick and roll that James Harden did against the Knicks? Like, why not try that? Embiid's getting triple teamed, and Doc can't figure out a scheme to get cutters in for open lanes. He's being triple teamed here. So that was one aspect. But the main thing that really fucking pissed me off is the Harden energy. The Raptors mainly got points off those fast breaks. Like, get your ass back on defense. That doesn't take any skill. That just takes effort. And that's what pissed me off the most about last night.
Well, we knew that the defense in general, and I appreciate the call, was going to be an issue with the Sixers and offensive rebounds, allowing them. Those were two deficiencies of the makeup of this team. No matter what they did out there, that was going to show its head at some point. It's just, can you counter that? And we know that turnovers is massive because when you turn the ball over, they're getting fast break opportunities. We've seen that really crush them in other games when you look at points off of turnovers and just throughout the series in general. When you lose we go back to some of those details, and it really hurts you. You talk about a pick and roll, and I thought one area that they did so well at early on was maximizing the two-man game and then Maxey being able to flourish. Well, Rich Hoffman, who does an excellent job covering the team for The Athletic, he put out some different pieces and some different clips online, and on Twitter you could see that here's Tyrese Maxey, and normally he would utilize that speed to cut the corner, and he would attack through the paint, through the free throw line, and go to the rim, but instead he defers, he picks up his dribble, and then he kicks it out about 5 feet from the three-point line to another player, and it's like there's no drive. Like, actually, I'm not talking about physically driving to the rim. There's no drive. There's no sense of urgency to do anything there, and it's like, yo, Maxey, you've been a guy this series to be a difference maker. Utilize that weapon that you have. Your speed, your burst, your fire. Go with it. Maximize it. But instead, I'm going to just hold the ball and end up passing and kicking out, and we can reset. Reset for what? We want that. Take advantage of that opportunity. So now, Joel is giving you 20. Harden's only taken 11 shots, and Maxey's not even going to try and use his speed? How do you win a game? I don't care if you're playing the Orlando Magic. I don't care who you're playing. If this is what you're going to get out of your players, you're not beating many teams. You're not beating the Indiana Pacers. You're not winning many NBA games with that effort. So it blows my mind how competitive athletes, to the nature of these competitors, don't respond accordingly. Seriously? This level of ugliness? How? We got $7 Canadian donated. Why would Sixers fans boo their own team? Because they weren't playing well enough. Do you think that negatively impacted your players? No, I don't think so. They weren't playing well enough. We were letting them know that they weren't playing well enough. You know how many times we've done that and I appreciate your donation. Thank you so much. Do you know how many times at the Eagles games, the Eagles fans would boo them going into half, and then they come out in the second half and they win? I mean, come on. No. You know why they stunk? Because they weren't prepared and focused. The Sixers fans booing them, not accepting their garbage is not the reason why the Sixers didn't win this game. The reason why they didn't win this game is because at tip-off, they thought that they could walk all over the Raptors, and they were sadly mistaken. Doc Rivers didn't prepare them. The players themselves did not prepare themselves, and they weren't able to execute well. They weren't ready for battle. They weren't ready for the hypothetical war, if you will. Not comparing this to real war, of course, but the basketball playoff war that they go to battle. The Raptors played with every ounce of sweat in their body. The Sixers played with about 70%. And it looked that way. I mean, you got your asses kicked, embarrassed. You weren't even involved at all. You know, over the last couple of games, when I mentioned, you look at the box score at half and you see they're only down 10, it feels like 25. Or you look at the clock at the 20 seconds left in the first half mark and you realize 5 points. Whoa, it feels like 30. They still have a fighter's chance. Didn't feel that way in this one. I talked about leading into the fourth. Maxey made a bucket. All right, you slip into it. But every single time where they needed to stop, the Raptors would answer with ease. They were getting any shot they wanted, and they were delivering in those moments too. So there was no feel. It felt they weren't going to even be close to fighting back. And I haven't felt that way in the first 4 games of this series. Even when the Raptors were in the lead and they were up 17 or they were up 10, I felt differently than this. This almost looked like the Sixers saw a ghost and they got their soul snatched from them, which ironically enough, I thought the Raptors had their soul snatched after Joel Embiid hit the dagger in overtime and celebrated, and you could hear a pin drop at the Scotiabank Center. So how the tables have turned. But I'll use that to my advantage here with a little bit of optimism and say, see how quickly things could change? Well, remember that. See how quickly things can change. This is what I expected from the start of the series. I was stunned to see the Sixers up 3-0. I said Sixers in 6. This wasn't the way I would have drawn up. I thought it would be back and forth, toe-to-toe, great games. You got early blowouts. You got an incredible overtime game. You got a weird, funky Game 5 where the Sixers don't even come ready to play. But this is really what we all expected, if we're going to be honest, right? This makes a little bit more sense than the Sixers handling it in 4 or going up 3-0. It's just the way that we're getting to Game 6 has taken me on a wild, emotional roller coaster ride. Let's go to Lance in Kansas City. Hey, Lance.
Hey, bros.
What's up?
How you doing? I wish I shared your same level of optimism that they can bounce back. I got to tell you, as soon as I heard that Embiid had torn ligaments in his thumb, I kind of saw this coming. Historically, the team has not played well when Embiid has been trying to play through injury. And they just look demoralized. They look like they've kind of given up because they don't believe that they can win with Embiid playing injured. And this injury is serious. I don't see him being able to dribble the ball. I don't see him being able to rebound the ball like he did. I don't see him being able to shoot the ball like he did. And you're not going to they might get past the Raptors, but you're not going to get past the Heat. And I think the team knows that, and they're playing like that.
Well, I do definitely feel that tone surrounding today, and I was on the road a lot today, so I was kind of tuning in to what, Anthony Gargano, Mike Missinelli. I was kind of getting the feel. I heard some of John Kincaid this morning, and I've heard that a lot, which is, I get it. Maybe they could beat the Raptors, but I'm so worried about round 2. And I guess for me, think about where we are right now. The last thing on my mind is, well, what can happen against Miami? I need to get there first. So you're not wrong. And I probably share that same fear now about whatever's next if they are to get by the Raptors. But I definitely have to keep in the moment and stay within the realm of where we're at now before I can even get there. And with that mindset, I'm with you where when Embiid seems to show pain, the team has a totally different demeanor about them, except last year, when you go back to that meniscus, he balled the hell out with that meniscus. I mean, a thumb is a lot different when it comes to ball handling, but I can't downplay what a 7'2" body frame is like with a torn meniscus either.
Yeah, he played well. He played last year. I think he had a 40-point game on that torn meniscus. And I think it was more so the team just kind of fell apart down the stretch. Obviously, Ben Simmons was a big part of that.
Let me throw this your way, Lance. And I don't want to pretend where the energy is and how it's shifted. I don't want to pretend that doesn't play a role. It does. But if I told you before the series began, the Sixers would be up 3-2 heading into Game 6, would you take that?
I would. However, things are completely different now.
Yeah, the injury is hard. If Embiid wasn't injured and they were down or they were up 3-2 heading into Toronto and we didn't see that physical pain, it would totally, totally change what I just brought up. But it's still not my point is, because you started the call saying I don't have that same optimism, it's bad where they're at. But it's also not this horrendous, absolute pathetic spot to be in either from a surface level. When you start peeling back in the context about it. But they're up 3-2 with a chance to close out the series. I mean, it's tough. It's upsetting. I didn't expect to be here after going 3-0. But if you just take a deep breath, you're not down 3-2 going to Toronto.
Yeah, and look, I expect them to make a game out of this on, Thursday night, and I expect it to be close. And I don't mean to look past this series and talk about the Heat. I know that there was a lot of that going on in the media, and it was annoying because even when they were up 3-0, it's like, we got to close this out. Like, I'm not that type of person to look beyond the first-round series. I'm just saying that if they do get beyond the Raptors with Embiid's injury, I think the team doesn't believe that they can win a championship with this injury because it is serious.
It is serious. Appreciate the call, Lance. I don't know how the team's feeling. I'm sure it's changed a little bit of life in there, but that's a problem if that's the case, right? These guys are professional athletes, and you got to continue to go down, put your head down, and work. You can't stop. So if that's going to derail you, you have the wrong set of people in the locker room. That's the way that I see it. If that's going to stop you from believing and you change everything about who you are and you go from a squad that can win 3 straight games to a team that loses 4 straight because all of a sudden a thumb injury, and I'm not going to pretend like losing Joel Embiid to a thumb injury is not some massive, massive change. But he's still out there, and you got to keep going. You can't have that. If you change your mind that much, you have the wrong set of guys in the locker room. Now, I just want to preface this by saying what I just mentioned, 3-2, going to Toronto. I'm not the most comfortable Sixers fan in the world at this very moment. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. I'm just bringing up, and it defines what I was saying earlier, which is everyone claimed the Raptors were dead. Everyone claimed that there's no way at this point they're down 3-0, put them in the coffin, it's all over. Well, right now, that's what people are saying about the Sixers. They're screwed. They're done. Oh, my Lord, they got waxed. They got no chance. Look at the way they're playing. Well, look how bad the Raptors were. It could change quicker than you think. Look how great the Sixers played those first 2 games. Look how bad they played yesterday. I mean, they played great. What if they have a great game? You can't say they can't. Why can't they? They already did it twice. Well, Embiid's thumb. I've seen Joel give you 40 points on a torn meniscus. Is it bothering him? Yup. Is he going to have to battle through it? Yup. Is it impossible? No, it's not impossible. That doesn't mean that it's a no-brainer that they absolutely win in Game 6, but I'm just giving that as an example. And I want to go to the playoffs here for the game log playoffs. We'll go back to that Atlanta series. 39 points, 40 points, 37 points, 31 points. That was on a torn meniscus. Playing 4-on-5. Excuse me. Because Ben Simmons couldn't play the sport of basketball. So I'm just referencing other times in his career where he did show up with discomfort. There's a difference between a hand when you're dribbling the basketball, but a torn meniscus? It's a pretty big deal too, though. That's not something to pretend isn't a big deal here, right? Like a torn meniscus on a body frame that big who works low, down low in the post and goes toe-to-toe with 6'9", 6'10", 7-footers? Still putting up those numbers? Let's go back to the phones. Hello, you're on Broads Media.
How's it going, bro? This is Max from Indiana.
Hey, Max.
The one thing, the losses don't bother me as much as the fashion they lost. There's nothing more demoralizing as an athlete than letting a team make you play a brand of basketball or a brand of whatever sport that you aren't. The Sixers need to get their identity back. You think of the first 2 games, the snappy passes from Harden. I think of the bounce pass across court to Maxey moving 100 miles an hour. If they can get back to their identity, the Raptors are making them play the version of basketball the Raptors want them to play, and that's their problem. If they can get back to what they want to play with, this series can be wrapped up this game.
So where I'm at is, it's not that the Raptors aren't doing anything, but it comes back to, are the Sixers just playing bad because they're playing bad and they don't have that sense of urgency to close things out? Or are the Raptors really making it so demoralizing that they can't play that good basketball again? I don't look at the Raptors and think that they're so elite at what they're doing and they're so amazing. They're working hard and they're out-competing you right now, but when it comes down to if they both competed at the same level, I still feel the Sixers have enough to overpower whatever the Raptors are throwing their way. And that's where it comes back to what you were saying, which is like the Raptors are forcing them to play a certain way just because of competition level. The Sixers have to rise their level and play with urgency, and I think everything will be all right. It's not like the Raptors are that much of a scary weapon where the Sixers can't find that control and get it back in their favor.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I'm saying if the Sixers come out and say, this is the brand of basketball we want to play, and we're doing that regardless of what's thrown at me, I don't think there's a way they lose this series. They just need to get back to that and stop playing so complacently because they have this lead.
You're right. It seems as if, Max, they're tipping the ball off, and they go, we'll be all right. We just need one more. They need 4. We need 1 more. We'll be okay. Just go through the motions. And they're going to learn quickly. Thanks for the phone call, Max. They're going to learn quickly that can backstab you. Just go back to what Doc Rivers did when he was with the Clippers. Now, we got some stats here, and I'm sure everybody has seen them at this point, but 146 teams have led an NBA best-of-7 series 3-0. Only 13 of those teams have lost the next 2 games. Only 3 have lost the next 3 games. So there's only been 3 other teams that were 3 teams total. The Sixers would be the 4th if they lose Game 6. That was forced to play a Game 7 after a 3-0 series lead. And, of course, none of those squads have won Game 7 because there's a lot of energy involved. There's a lot that goes into even fighting back and crawling back to get to that 7th game. And I think over a window of time, it ends up playing a toll on the body, just like I brought up with Maxey, where I think now this is a physical series. There's a lot of length with Toronto. And over these games have been playing out, it's like, okay, there's a lot I got to do here to adapt and change my game. And that's fine. That's totally fine. Obviously, we're extremely overwhelmed with how great of a jump Tyrese Maxey has put on display for us as Sixers fans. But there's another gear that he's going to need to get to physically and mentally to get over this hurdle of what happened, what transpired after such a great effort in that first game. And things have kind of changed as Nick Nurse has seen it play out. But it really needs to start with their attitude and their edge that they start Game 6 with. I feel once we see the game start, you're going to have to weather the storm. It's going to be loud in Toronto. It's going to be massive when it comes to that crowd and how epic it will be. They'll get loud. They'll get noisy. They'll probably throw chants Embiid's way, and they'll be that trash set of individuals that we saw early on. With that, weather the storm, but when you watch the Sixers' body language, when you watch their tone, when you read the way it feels through the first 5-6 minutes or so, even through weathering the storm, I think that will give you everything you need to know about how this is going to transpire. It's a lot of pressure for the first few minutes. There'll be a wave, and I get that. But you could tell by acknowledgement of body language, head nods, sets being ran, the efficiency, the turnovers. Are they bitching and complaining and look around at one another when they get beat defensively early on? Are they yapping at one another when they're on the bench? Does it look like they're in it? Or does it look like Sam Darnold after throwing a couple interceptions and he's sitting on the bench wondering what went wrong? Which one is it? Thursday, on the day of the draft, we get robbed having to spend our time there. How crazy. Let's go to Jimmy. Hey, Jimmy.
What's up, bros? You can hear me?
I can. How are you?
I'm doing good. I just want to mention the thing about the draft. Like, it sucks that we're going to have to deal with this, all this stress for the next 3 days, and then we're going to have to watch instead of just distracted from the Eagles thing. But, you know, how can you not be at least a little bit concerned right now? I mean, they had their chance last night to close it out in Game 5, and not only they didn't win, but, like, they got pretty decisively beaten. Some of that was based on the Sixers just not playing well, but I think it's also Nick Nurse out coaching and adjusting to what Doc Rivers was doing. And that was a major concern coming into the series, and it took 3 games, but now I think it's starting to rear its ugly head.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not saying Nick Nurse didn't do anything. I'm more disappointed in James Harden and Joel Embiid. If they, regardless of what Doc is doing, if they just played better, then we're not talking about Nick Nurse. Nick Nurse, he was handed an injured Fred VanVleet, which happened to be a positive for the Raptors. It's not like Nick Nurse said, hey, Fred, you're getting exposed and the Sixers are taking advantage of you. I'm taking you out of the lineup and I'm going to change things and switch things, where the size just organically happened to benefit the Raptors, but it's not Nick Nurse being some genius to sit as all-star point guard and to change things in that direction. The biggest problem isn't Nick Nurse. The biggest problem is James Harden and Joel Embiid right now. And really, James Harden only giving you 11 shots is one of the most disappointing things I can think about when it comes to that game, Game 5.
Well, that's true. And I also want to bring this up as well. This idea that, the Sixers got completely, they got destroyed by the Nets in the trade anyway. No, they didn't. Like, even if James Harden isn't even Brooklyn Nets James Harden, the Nets got swept. So this idea that, we shouldn't have even tried to trade for him is stupid, considering how much that trade backfired on the Nets behalf.
Yeah, it definitely did. Thanks for calling in, Jimmy. It backfired for them. I got so much going through my brain. The last thing I'm thinking about, which is crazy because it seems like Ben Simmons always finds his way in my upset body, right? I'm always finding a way to somehow land on a Ben Simmons conversation. Right now is just not the time. He's sitting there with all black uniforms on. He's got orange pants or green shirts, Louis Vuitton this, Jordan 4 Lightnings, which are these obnoxious yellow shoes. And then now all of a sudden he can't play and the Nets are disappointed on what's going to happen. The communication seems to be off. It's just a wild thing that he's going to do. They're saying the mental health is now causing his back to flare up because of stress. I have no idea what, but in terms of the trade, I mean, come on. People were complaining that Seth Curry and Andre Drummond were going to make the Nets a super team that wins the championship. Remember, there were upset Sixers fans. Not that this matters right now. The Sixers have to take care of business, and the focus level should be the Toronto Raptors Game 6. It is, though, hysterical to think about how many of you all out there thought that Daryl Morey screwed up because they traded the finishing pieces to the Brooklyn Nets to take them over the hump. So they're now a contender to win a championship because of what Seth Curry and Andre Drummond provides. No. No. The Sixers maximized what they could. They took a calculated risk. It's not even written yet. It's not written. I'm not surprised that he had a clunker. I knew heading into this series, if you go back to the show where I talked about what to expect, what are my expectations for this series? You'll get good Harden games. You'll get ugly Harden games. Can you win the ugly Harden games? Do they fall on a night where Joel Embiid gets 44 and Tyrese Maxey goes off? Or does it fall on a night where Joel has a tough night too and then you happen to lose? Do your good games fall on nights where James Harden is unreal, but Joel Embiid has a tougher night? Or is it a game where both of them play extremely well and then you win? Well, game 1 happened to be one where Maxey had 38 points and it all came together. Game 2, same exact thing. Now you're seeing what happens in game 5 where they both kind of have off nights. They both stunk. I mean, let's be realistic. Embiid got destroyed defensively. He wasn't as dominant offensively. The ball got stagnant. You're not going to win against any team. It's not the Raptors. It's any team. You're not going to win games that way. So I'm not surprised that they happen to lose when this is the case. You won't beat Orlando. You won't beat me and you over at the local courts on the double rim. Unbelievable. All right, everyone. Once again, I just want to apologize for the delay on when I was recording this. Not ideal, but life happens, and unfortunately, I had a circumstance that I had to take care of, which did not allow for me to record post-game, and this was the first time I was able to get it done and out to you, but it was on my mind the whole entire time to make sure we discuss this. I just want to apologize for the delay. If you are new to the channel, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button. Hit that thumbs up button as well. I greatly appreciate everybody's support. SeatGeek, promo code BROADS. Get yourself to a game today, whether it's NBA playoffs, whether it's baseball, now that that's back in action. SeatGeek, promo code BROADS gets you $20 off of your purchase for first-time users. That eliminates all those fees. It eliminates the parking or free beer for you, however you want to analyze that. Promo code BROADS. And then lastly, social media. Broads Media. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. Hit the follow button there. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. I appreciate the patience for this recording. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you next.